I hear Jerusalem bells are ringing, Roman cavalry choirs are singing. Be my mirror, my sword and shield, my missionaries in a foreign field. For some reason I can't explain, once you go there was never an honest word. But that was when I ruled the world.
We used to rule the world. 1 minute I held the key. Next, the walls were closed on me.
Now more than ever, we need to rethink journalism, reconnect to our audience, and focus not only on the now and yesterday, but also on tomorrow and on the potential solutions to our shared problems.
And thank you for coming here and helping us to build a global constructive movement, not only to make journalism great again or to reboot a struggling media world, but actually to help democracy, meaning all of us. Welcome to the second Global Constructive Journalism Conference.
Journalism helps democracy flourish. It inspires us to take action and to believe that change is possible. But when it comes up short, it opens the door to misinformation, to ignorance, to disillusionment, and to demagoguery. When it comes up short, power goes unchecked. When it comes up short, the public sphere fragments. So constructive journalism, to me, is the most convincing answer I've heard yet to live up to this responsibility. How to react to unreason, with reason and absolute objectivity. How to react to constant commotion and hysteria, with a solid and thorough core craft of reporting. How to react to growing polarization and partisanship, by putting oneself in the other's shoe, by taking arguments and counter-arguments seriously. And how to react to the crisis of trust, by exploring and presenting solutions. That is constructive journalism.
And my conclusion is the following. If you talk with all the parties, ask them what they want. Ask them how they justify what they want. Very important. Get their theory, their self-justification. If you then check the long lists for legitimacy, is what I want legal? Is it compatible with human rights? Is it compatible with basic human needs, basic nature needs? And what they want more or less pass those tests. Then go ahead and help them formulate something even better. Something where there is space for all of them. Something that makes a jump forward and makes the move forward. The world, global. Thank you.
I think this is historic that Mr. Galton is here, and he was the first one ever to talk about the news criteria.
Yeah, we said.
And the thing was, when you read that article, and it's long and it's very good, it turns out it was a warning against the consequences if we kept doing what we were doing in the news.
Exactly.
That was it.
Exactly.
But is it true that we have misunderstood that and taught it to generation after generation as a standard of how to do it? Is that right?
I think that's right.
What's the consequence for democracy with that misunderstanding, as you call it?
Not basic news at all. You don't get it.
Existentially, it poses the paradoxical question, how can democracies survive and thrive in an environment of unfettered free expression? I choose to be optimistic, and I expect you are as well. I believe we can create new journalistic models. We can help readers separate fact from fiction and wisdom from spin. We can help journalism regain the trust of readers and maintain journalism's crucial role in open societies. It's the responsibility of all of us who perform the act of journalism or who support the role of journalism to maintain those ethics, to hold each other to account, to help the societies we serve understand our roles and our ethics. That is ever more important in a world where there is too much news that pretends to be journalism but is not. In a world where politicians actively deride the role of the press and the role of journalists. None of us involved in this pursuit, whether news organizations or tech platforms, journalists or journalists-to-be, should assume that someone else will play the role of educating our societies about journalism's purpose, of maintaining the ethics of the profession, and above all, maintaining the trust of the citizens we serve. That responsibility is on all of us who care about the future of quality journalism, about the future of open societies. It's on every one of us every day. And I thank you.
At this point in time, constructive journalism carries with itself the threat of being used by people that actually are not interested in everything that we are interested in.
Journalism should be changed just a little. We have to do it from within, out of the love of journalism. Not because we want to get rid of it, not to say that everything we do in journalism is bad. This is not a contradiction. This is not posing being investigative. This is constructive journalism is just finishing the circle of investigative reporting. You uncover an important problem, but instead of just stopping there and try to find out who's to blame for that, and then we jump onto another one, we should finish it and say, okay, now we don't know that. Now what and how? And we angle on the crooks and victims. And what's the problem with that? The problem is that if that's the only narrative, the only way we filter the world for people out there, then the public debate will be about now and yesterday. But what is the essence of politics? The essence of politics is about tomorrow. But the truth is, it doesn't really fit into our news criteria, right? So constructive journalism is about this. It's the notion that journalism can also, not as an alternative, be about tomorrow, inspirational, asking questions none of us learned in journalism school. Now, what, and how?
I'm very optimistic about the mission of journalism, but from a business point of view, I think we have to face the facts. Advertisers fundamentally buy attention, and attention is going elsewhere. Much of the journalism that's being produced around the world is something that people don't feel is worth paying attention to, let alone paying money for. No one is going to rescue us. If we want to build a future for journalism, we've got to do it ourselves. I mean, that may not be a comfortable observation, but that's the honest truth. So the question is only whether we're going to do it or whether we're going to live with managed decline and then see things shut up and wither away.
Probably the biggest misunderstanding about what we think solutions journalism is it's about good news. It's about the emotions you're trying to create in the reader. And we don't think about that. It's really about the knowledge you're giving people.
David named it very well, but if we are useful to a community, then they would pay for that. So we are targeting useful information, and we want to serve communities and to build communities as well.
And then just a remark upon representation. I heard a Canadian public service leader expressing it as their audience is saying that, why should we listen to you? You're old, you're white, and you're worried. And
okay, that's another one. Okay.
You know, if people are enemies, political enemies, if they argue, how is it possible to overcome the divide? How is it possible to bridge the gap? Who is able to do that and how? He was expecting a monster, very much as I was expecting a monster when I met Sven, like a 360-degree monster or something like that. But instead he got a human being, right? And the first thing about this meeting that he noticed was not some kind of political opinion. It was the Westphalia accent in the bike. So he was immediately looking for similarities. It's just what humans do in such a situation. It's natural. So, of course, not everyone has the opportunity to meet political enemies face to face and have such a experience. It's our job to tell them about those people. And if we only focus on the things that drive us apart, on the conflict and drama, we basically misrepresent reality, and we feed into that narrative. That's what really bothers me.
The Human Rights Declaration was adopted 70 years ago. We could consider that some of the principles could be adapted, for instance, regarding the rights, what is a basic right, and that the Human Rights Declaration was adopted and inspired by the French Declaration on the rights of citizens, and also the American principles. So it was more a right of the people who publicize. The basic right was it. And now do we consider that in our world it has to be the basic right, or should the basic right, the right of the people, all the citizens, all the human beings who get an access to the information and communication space? Considering that platforms, or whatever we consider, shouldn't be considered as publishers. Because do we want Mark Zuckerberg to be a publisher or an editor-in-chief and decide his own editorial line? No, precisely, I think we have to refuse it. So the responsibilities have to be established, but specific responsibilities for what we call the entities that create means, architectures of choice and norms for information and communication.
Facebook, Google have moved a way towards being more transparent, but I think we just need it to be even more so, because I think it's critical for publishers to know, because we're so dependent on you now. I mean, it's coerced dependence, you could say, because in reality, we don't have any choice. We have to use Facebook, we have to use Google if we're going to get our journalism out there.
I think as well that we have a responsibility to make sure that the content that people see on Facebook is authentic, and that where we identify news which is deliberately misleading, we take action. So we've been working over the last year and a half now to build up a network under the International Fact-Checking Network run by the Poynter Institute of a collaboration of independent third-party fact-checkers
on the discussions around transparency, around visibility, around accessibility. That's where the really important, whether it's enshrined as a single right or not, there are different ways of doing that, but it's the meat of and the degrees of transparency, and the degrees, because none of us want whole-scale regulation, none of us want that.
So how do we cover these crucial issues in a way that isn't superficial or paternalistic or trite? And I'd like to believe that constructive journalism is part of the answer to that, but our definition of constructive is slightly different than some of what we heard this morning. I am blessed and humbled to lead an organization that tries to offer constructive journalism on some of the biggest challenges of our time: migration, climate change, wars, and epidemics. Iran News has a network of about 200 journalists in some 70 countries around the world, and we try to go beyond the headlines, to examine the causes of crises, to look at their implications, and to approach our work as a mission-driven organization. We're putting high-quality, independent journalism at the service of the most vulnerable people on Earth. And our goal is to inform the prevention of crises and the response to crises. And in so doing, to lead to more effective and accountable international policymaking for those in need.
Now, the BBC, like many other public broadcasters, are facing what is a crisis. I don't know, there's a lot of young people here on the floor, which is great, but a lot of my kids, they don't consume traditional media in the way that people used to. And it's a real crisis for broadcasters. We need to reach young people. And so much evidence, both anecdotal and other evidence, is finding that young people want to hear about solutions. They want to, if it's a story that can't be solved, they say they're not interested and they turn it off. And this is, I think, the youth, young people, is the most convincing argument. That's what I found myself for making the case why we need more solution-focused journalism, more constructive journalism. So thank you very much indeed.
And we're also reciprocal by nature. So if we're given to the process to get your question answered, raise your hands. Okay.
again, that's probably one of the end aims of my project, is that the upside, by maybe this time next year or in 18 months, that the upside will disappear as a brand, as a badge on stories. It'll just be, I want it to just be part of our general news culture. But that's a kind of internal mountain for me to climb, to persuade people that, yes, audiences love this. Yes, it changes the world. Yes, it holds power to account. Yes, it has really great outcomes. Yes, it's proper shoe leather, rigorous journalism. And I think that ideally what we end up with is not this balkanized product, but that our mainstream news.
These journalists face so many really tough practical problems just in their daily life. So, all the golden ideas, they are wonderful, but this is a reality where you can actually lose your life trying to make a good story for radio or television or whatever.
So, where in crisis situations, rumors swirl very rapidly. And in that context, people want a relationship of trust. People want to know what is happening. Any media organization that is able to provide that relationship, yes, any organization that's able to provide that relationship is the media organization that audiences would gravitate towards.
How do you get to the point where you start to try to get people who've been enemies, who've cast themselves as enemies for generations, to actually start to meet and begin to talk about what's happened to them? Well, obviously the media can provide space, but also the way we come at it is to talk about civil norms. This idea that there is the potential to have journalism and journalists and the value of journalism itself contribute to something called civil norm building.
So our focus is to produce and broadcast content, support media, and measure with the audience our work in some of the places where we haven't really talked about yet today. The issue is not, there is too many outlets and news outlets and buzz on the internet. We are talking about places like Mali, Central African Republic, the DRC, Myanmar, where there is no sources of information.
The authorities, which often has a say on it, takes months to decide whether to realize a solution, even though they agree that it's a good one. And it's very hard in our impatient world of media and journalists. We want a solution and we want something to happen tomorrow. It's very hard to be patient and keep on following it and covering it and waiting for things to happen.
This is not a fast story. This is not a short story. This is a very, very long story. And it is told so you have been taken there. It's full with passion, it's full with details and factual information, and it's just a damn good story.
This is a story really about the slaying of a dragon that is happening today. It's about how the Democratic Republic of Congo is stamping out sleeping sickness, which is a disease that, the Congo has 85% of the diseases in the world. If you go back to the year 2000, there were about 30,000 cases every year, and now there's less than 1,000. And the question is, how did that happen?
The winner is, are you ready? Sarah Bosley from The Guardian.
Obviously, it's absolutely fantastic to win. But for me, the tension in it is that this is the DRC. Everybody thinks DRC is a basket case and that nothing good can come out of there. They've got Ebola, they've obviously got genocide, horrible things have happened. No, credit to them. Thank you.
The world is slow walking towards chaos. And right now, more than ever, the world needs to work together on solving all of these problems we have. And more than ever, we need skilled, balanced journalism to tell those stories about potential solutions and facilitate debates and inspire each other on how to do that. And we can all do that. And you'll go home and you'll do fantastic work, and you will tell us about it, and next year we will put you on stage and tell the rest of the world about it. Thank you for being here. It has been such a pleasure to have you. Have a nice trip home.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.